In November 2018, Yasmin Juarez filed a legal claim seeking $60 million from the U.S. government for the death of her daughter Marie, who died after being released from an ICE detention center in Texas. The claim alleged that ICE and its contractors were negligent and deliberately indifferent to the health and safety of Marie and other migrants in custody. Juarez and her daughter fled violence and poverty in Guatemala and crossed the U.S. border in March 2018, seeking asylum. They were detained at the South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, where Marie contracted a respiratory infection that was not properly treated by the medical staff. Juarez said she repeatedly asked for more care for her daughter, who was suffering from fever, coughing, diarrhea, and vomiting, but was only given honey and Tylenol. After 3 weeks in detention, Juarez and Marie were released and joined relatives in New Jersey. There, Juarez took Marie to a hospital, where she was diagnosed with a viral lung infection and transferred to a children's hospital. Despite multiple surgeries and treatments, Marie's condition worsened and she died on May 10, 2018. Juarez's lawsuit accused ICE and its contractors of failing to provide adequate medical care, sanitary living conditions, and safe transportation for the detained migrants. It also claimed that ICE violated its own standards and policies regarding the treatment of children in custody. Juarez's lawyers said that Marie's death was preventable and that the U.S. government was responsible for it. In July 2019, Juarez testified before a House subcommittee on civil rights and civil liberties, where she tearfully recounted her daughter's death and urged Congress to investigate the conditions in ICE detention centers. She said that she came to the U.S. hoping for a better and safer life for her and her daughter, but instead watched her die slowly and painfully. She said that the world should know what is happening to so many children inside these facilities. The tragic death of Yasmin Juarez's daughter is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of the systemic issues and challenges faced by migrants seeking asylum in the U.S., especially during the COVID-19 pandemic and under the Trump administration's policies. Asylum is a form of protection granted to people who flee their home countries due to persecution or fear of persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. The U.S. has legal obligations to provide protection to those who qualify as refugees under international and domestic law. However, asylum seekers face many obstacles and barriers when they arrive at the U.S. border or within the U.S. territory. Some of these challenges include difficulty speaking and learning English. Many asylum seekers do not speak English or have limited proficiency, which makes it hard for them to communicate with immigration officials, access services, find work, and integrate into their new communities. Raising children and helping them succeed in school. Asylum seekers often have children who accompany them or join them later through family reunification. These children face trauma, discrimination, language barriers, and cultural differences that affect their well-being and education. Securing work and housing. Asylum seekers are authorized to work in the U.S. after they file their applications, but they often face delays in obtaining work permits, discrimination from employers, low wages, and exploitation. They also struggle to find affordable and safe housing, especially in areas with high rents and limited availability. Accessing services and transportation. Asylum seekers need basic services such as health care, mental health counseling, legal assistance, education, and social support. However, they often encounter long waiting lists, eligibility restrictions, lack of information, and insufficient funding for these services. They also face challenges in accessing public transportation or obtaining driver's licenses, which limits their mobility and opportunities. Cultural barriers and isolation. Asylum seekers come from diverse backgrounds and cultures, which may differ significantly from those of their host communities. They may face discrimination, racism, xenophobia, and hostility from some segments of the society. They may also feel lonely, isolated, and alienated from their new environment. uncertainty, and fear of deportation. Asylum seekers live in a state of limbo while they wait for their cases to be decided by immigration courts or USCIS. This process can take months or years, depending on the backlog and complexity of their cases. During this time, they face the risk of being detained by ICE or deported back to their countries of origin, where they may face harm or death. These challenges have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Trump administration's policies that have restricted access to asylum and increased enforcement actions against asylum seekers. Some of these policies include Title 42, a public health order issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, in March 2020 that allows the U.S. government to expel migrants who cross the border without authorization or proper documentation, without giving them a chance to apply for asylum or other forms of protection. This order has been used to expel more than 1 million migrants since its implementation, including many asylum seekers and unaccompanied children. Remain in Mexico, a policy formerly known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, that requires asylum seekers who arrive at the southern border to wait in Mexico while their cases are processed in the U.S. This policy has exposed thousands of asylum seekers to violence, kidnapping, extortion, and human rights abuses in Mexico. Asylum Cooperative Agreements, ACA's agreements signed by the U.S. with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador that allow the U.S. to transfer asylum seekers who pass through these countries to seek protection there instead of in the U.S. These agreements have been criticized by human rights groups as violating international law and endangering the lives of asylum seekers who are sent to countries with high levels of violence and corruption. Asylum bans, rules issued by the Trump administration that bar certain groups of asylum seekers from eligibility based on how they entered the country, such as between ports of entry, where they transited, such as through a third country, or what kind of persecution they face, such as domestic violence or gang violence. Metering, a practice that limits the number of asylum seekers who can present themselves at ports of entry each day. This practice has created long waitlists and overcrowded conditions in border cities, where asylum seekers have to wait for months or years before they can access the U.S. asylum system. These policies have violated the right to seek asylum and have caused immense suffering and harm to thousands of migrants who seek safety and dignity in the U.S. They have also undermined the U.S.'s reputation as a leader in human rights and refugee protection. As we mourn the loss of Yasmin Juarez's daughter and demand justice for her family, we must also call for an end to these cruel and unlawful policies that deny asylum seekers their rights and dignity. We must urge the Biden administration to reverse these policies and restore access to asylum for those who need it most. We must also support organizations that provide humanitarian aid, legal assistance, advocacy, and solidarity to asylum seekers at the border and within the U.S. Asylum seekers are not criminals or invaders. They are human beings who deserve compassion, respect, and protection.